There are moments in television that nobody sees coming. Moments when the cameras capture something so raw and unexpected that everyone watching knows they are witnessing something real. Steve Harvey had been hosting Family Feud for 13 years by November 2024, and he believed he had experienced every possible surprise a game show could deliver. He had seen contestants faint from excitement, families break into spontaneous celebrations, and players give answers so bizarre they defied explanation. But nothing in his extensive career had prepared him for what was about to happen on that cool Thursday afternoon when the cameras started rolling and two families took their places on stage. What began as another entertaining episode of America's favorite game show would transform into a moment of truth so shocking that it would stop production, leave the audience speechless, and remind everyone watching that sometimes the most powerful drama happens when people least expect it. If you value real stories about real people facing real challenges, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more content that goes beyond entertainment to touch the genuine human experiences we all share. The Watkins family from Tennessee stood ready to compete against the Rodriguez family from Texas. Both families had brought their competitive spirit and their hopes of winning the $20,000 grand prize. The Watkins family consisted of Michael Watkins, his wife Jennifer, his brother David, his sister-in-law Karen, and his cousin Thomas. They appeared to be the picture of a successful American family, well-dressed and confident, exchanging encouraging words as they prepared to face their first question. Jennifer Watkins stood at the end of the family line, a 45-year-old woman who had been married to Michael for 22 years. She wore an elegant burgundy dress, and her hair was styled perfectly for television. Her smile seemed genuine as she waved to the audience during the introduction, and she held her husband's hand with what appeared to be comfortable familiarity. The game progressed through its initial rounds with typical Family Feud energy. Steve Harvey worked the crowd with his signature humor, the families competed with enthusiasm, and the answers ranged from predictable to amusing. The Watkins family was performing reasonably well, matching the Rodriguez family point for point in a competitive but friendly atmosphere. The audience was engaged and responsive, laughing at Steve's reactions and applauding good answers. Everything about the taping suggested it would be another successful episode in the long history of the show. Then came the question that would change everything. Steve Harvey walked to the center of the stage holding his question card, and his expression showed he expected this to generate some entertaining responses. He looked at the Watkins family and read the survey question aloud with his characteristic delivery. "We asked 100 people to name something you might hide in your car." The question was designed to elicit humorous answers about hidden snacks, emergency supplies, or perhaps guilty pleasure music collections. The audience chuckled in anticipation, and both families prepared to compete for control of the board. Michael Watkins hit the buzzer first, winning the right to give the initial answer. He responded confidently with "spare tire," which appeared on the board as the number 5 answer with 12 points. Steve turned to Jennifer Watkins for the next response, expecting another straightforward answer that would help build her family's score. "Jennifer, name something you might hide in your car." His tone was casual and encouraging, the standard approach he used with thousands of contestants over the years. Jennifer stood at her podium looking directly at Steve Harvey, but something in her expression had shifted. The practiced smile had disappeared, replaced by something harder to define. When she spoke, her voice was clear and steady, but carried an edge that made everyone listening pay closer attention. "Love letters from the man I've been seeing for the past 10 years. The studio fell into absolute silence. This was not the stunned quiet that sometimes follows an unexpected answer. This was the profound silence of people processing information that their minds struggled to categorize as real. Steve Harvey's famous expressiveness failed him completely in that moment. His mouth opened, but no words emerged. He looked at Jennifer, then at Michael Watkins, whose face had gone pale, then back at Jennifer, who stood with her arms crossed over her chest and her chin raised slightly in what appeared to be defiant resolve. The audience sat frozen, uncertain whether this was some kind of elaborate joke or if they were witnessing an actual marriage implode on live television. The production crew in the booth exchanged confused glances, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the moment continue. Michael Watkins found his voice first, though it came out strained and barely above a whisper. "Jennifer, what are you doing?" His question hung in the air, heavy with disbelief and dawning horror. Jennifer turned to face her husband directly, and when she responded, her voice carried 22 years of suppressed feelings. I'm telling the truth, Michael. I'm done pretending. I'm done smiling for cameras and playing the happy wife when I stopped being happy with you over a decade ago. Steve Harvey had navigated countless awkward moments during his hosting career, but this situation demanded something beyond his usual repertoire of humor and charm. He walked slowly toward Jennifer's podium, his expression showing genuine concern mixed with professional uncertainty about how to proceed. "Jennifer, honey, are you sure you want to do this right here, right now?" His voice was gentle, offering her an exit from a choice that could not be undone once the cameras captured it. Jennifer nodded firmly, tears beginning to stream down her face but her posture remaining strong and determined. "Mr. Harvey, I've been living a lie for so long that I forgot what truth felt like. When you asked that question about hiding things in cars, something inside me just broke open. Those letters are in my car right now, hidden under the spare tire, actually. I've been hiding them, hiding him, hiding my real life from everyone who thinks they know me. I can't do it anymore." The other members of the Watkins family stood in shocked silence. David and Karen exchanged horrified glances while Thomas looked down at his feet as if hoping to disappear into the floor. Michael Watkins seemed unable to process what was happening, his face cycling through expressions of disbelief, anger, and devastation. The Rodriguez family, their opponents in what was supposed to be a lighthearted game show competition, stood respectfully quiet, clearly uncomfortable with being present for such an intimate revelation. Steve made a decision that demonstrated why he had earned such respect in the television industry. He signaled to the production team to stop taping, then addressed everyone in the studio with authority and compassion. "Ladies and gentlemen, we need to take a break here. This is clearly a real situation that these folks need to work through, and we're going to give them some privacy and respect." He turned to Jennifer and Michael. "You two need to talk, but maybe not in front of 400 people and television cameras. We've got a room backstage where you can have some privacy." Jennifer shook her head, her tears flowing more freely now, but her voice still steady. "No, Mr. Harvey, I appreciate your kindness, but I need to say this. Other women are watching this, women who are living lies because they're too afraid to speak their truth. They need to know it's possible to stop pretending." She turned to face the audience directly, speaking not just to the people in the studio, but to the millions who would eventually see this moment. "My name is Jennifer Watkins, and I've been married to Michael for 22 years. For the last 10 of those years, I've been involved with another man named Robert. He knows I'm married. I know what I've been doing is wrong. But I also know that my marriage died years ago, and I've been too scared of judgment, too worried about what people would think, too concerned about disrupting our comfortable life to admit it." The confession continued to pour out of her, years of hidden truth finally finding voice. She explained how she had met Robert at a business conference, how what started as friendship had evolved into something deeper, how she had tried to end her marriage honestly multiple times, but had always backed down when faced with the complications of divorce and the expectations of their families and community. She described the exhaustion of maintaining two separate lives, the guilt that accompanied every lie, and the growing realization that she was wasting precious years of her life living according to other people's definitions of what her marriage should be. Michael Watkins finally found his voice again, and his words came out sharp with anger and pain. "So you decided to humiliate me on national television instead of talking to me like an adult?" Jennifer met his anger with weary honesty. "I tried to talk to you, Michael. I tried 3 years ago when I told you I was unhappy and needed us to go to counseling. You said I was being dramatic. I tried 2 years ago when I said I wanted us to separate and figure out if we still wanted to be married. You told me I was selfish for even suggesting it. I tried last year when I said I couldn't keep living like we were roommates instead of partners. You changed the subject and never brought it up again." The exchange revealed layers of a failing marriage that had been hidden beneath a surface of conventional respectability. Michael attempted to defend himself, to argue that Jennifer's affair negated any legitimate complaints she might have about their relationship. But Steve Harvey, his pastoral instincts engaged by the human suffering he was witnessing, gently interrupted the escalating argument. "Hold on now, both of you. This is painful and it's complicated, and you're both hurt and angry. But attacking each other in front of all these people isn't going to help anything." He addressed Michael directly with firm compassion. "Sir, I hear your pain and your anger, and you have every right to those feelings. But Jennifer is telling you she tried to communicate with you for years before this affair started, and you're going to need to think honestly about whether that's true." Then he turned to Jennifer. "And Jennifer, I understand you're exhausted and you needed to tell your truth. But having an affair wasn't the answer, and you know that. Two wrongs don't make a right, even when you're hurting. The production break stretched into 45 minutes as Jennifer and Michael, with Steve Harvey serving as an impromptu mediator, continued their painful conversation away from the main stage. The audience remained in the studio, subdued and reflective, sensing they had witnessed something significant. When filming finally resumed, both families were gone. Steve Harvey stood alone on the stage and addressed the camera with unusual seriousness. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you just saw was real life interrupting what's supposed to be a fun game show. Jennifer and Michael Watkins are dealing with a very difficult situation, and they've asked for privacy to work through it. We're going to respect that request." He paused, clearly affected by what had transpired. "But I want to say something to everyone watching at home. Marriage is hard. Life is complicated. Sometimes people grow apart. Sometimes people make mistakes. Sometimes people stay in situations that aren't working because they're afraid of what honesty will cost them." He continued with the wisdom that had made him a trusted voice for millions of viewers. "What happened here today wasn't right or wrong in a simple way. Was Jennifer wrong to have an affair? Yes. Was Michael wrong to ignore his wife's unhappiness for years? Yes. Are they both human beings trying to navigate difficult emotions and complicated circumstances? Absolutely. If you're in a relationship that isn't working, talk to each other. Go to counseling. Be honest about your feelings before they turn into actions you can't undo. And if you've already made mistakes, if you're already in a situation like Jennifer's, find the courage to address it honestly instead of living a double life that will eventually collapse under its own weight." The episode that eventually aired was unlike anything Family Feud had ever broadcast. The producers made the decision to include the entire confrontation, with Jennifer and Michael's permission, believing it served a larger purpose beyond entertainment. They added resources at the end of the episode for marriage counseling, support groups for people dealing with infidelity, and crisis hotlines for those in difficult relationships. The response from viewers was overwhelming and divided. Thousands of people wrote to express their appreciation for Jennifer's courage in speaking her truth, sharing their own stories of being trapped in unhappy marriages or living double lives. Many credited her confession with giving them the strength to have honest conversations with their own partners about problems they had been avoiding. Marriage counselors reported increases in couples seeking help, with many specifically citing the Family Feud episode as the catalyst that made them finally address issues they had been ignoring. Other viewers condemned Jennifer harshly for her infidelity and for choosing such a public venue to reveal it. They argued that she had humiliated her husband unnecessarily and that her complaints about their marriage didn't justify years of deception. Online discussions about the episode revealed deep divides in how people viewed questions of marriage, fidelity, honesty, and the responsibility partners owe to each other. Jennifer and Michael Watkins, after several weeks of separation and individual counseling, made the decision to divorce. Jennifer released a public statement acknowledging that her affair was wrong regardless of the problems in her marriage, apologizing to Michael for the pain she had caused him, and explaining that they both deserved the chance to find genuine happiness rather than continuing to live in a relationship that had become hollow. Michael released his own statement expressing his hurt and anger, but also acknowledging that he bore some responsibility for the failure of their marriage by not taking his wife's concerns seriously until it was too late. 6 months after the infamous Family Feud taping, Jennifer and Robert made their relationship public. They appeared together at a marriage and family conference where Jennifer spoke about the costs of deception and the importance of honest communication in relationships. She was forthright about the fact that her affair had been wrong, but she also shared how years of feeling unheard and invisible in her marriage had contributed to her choices. She encouraged couples to address problems early, to seek help when needed, and to be honest with themselves and each other about whether their relationships were truly working or simply continuing out of habit and fear. Michael Watkins also began speaking publicly about his experience, focusing on the importance of listening to partners and taking their concerns seriously rather than dismissing them as overreactions. He admitted that he had taken Jennifer for granted, assuming their marriage was fine because they weren't fighting and their lives looked successful from the outside. He talked about the painful lessons he learned about the difference between appearing to have a good marriage and actually having one. Steve Harvey reflected on the experience in multiple interviews and on his radio show. He discussed how the incident had affected him personally, forcing him to think more deeply about the complexity of relationships and the desperation that drives people to make choices they know will cause pain. He spoke with surprising nuance about how Jennifer's choice to speak out, while problematic in many ways, had also sparked important conversations about honesty in marriage and the dangers of avoiding difficult truths. The episode became a cultural touchpoint, referenced in articles about infidelity, honesty in relationships, and the performative nature of modern marriage. Sociology professors used it as a teaching tool in classes about family dynamics and social expectations. Therapists incorporated discussions of it into their work with couples, using it to illustrate the importance of addressing problems before they metastasize into affairs and deception. For Jennifer Watkins herself, the aftermath of that moment on Family Feud was both difficult and liberating. She lost some friendships and faced harsh judgment from segments of her community. But she also found unexpected support from people who appreciated her honesty and related to her struggle. She began working with a marriage and family therapist to help other women navigate the complex process of leaving unhappy relationships and building new lives with honesty and integrity. One of the most discussed aspects of the entire situation was Jennifer's decision to make her confession so publicly rather than handling it privately. Many people questioned why she chose a game show as the venue for such a revelation. In a later interview, Jennifer explained that she had not planned to confess on television. She had come to the taping thinking she would just play the game and go home. But when Steve Harvey asked about hiding things in cars, and she thought about the letters hidden in her vehicle, something inside her simply snapped. She described it as years of pressure suddenly finding a release valve, and before she fully realized what she was doing, the truth was pouring out of her. The psychological explanation for such moments resonated with many viewers who had experienced their own breaking points, when secrets became too heavy to carry. Mental health professionals discussed how the stress of living a double life can create situations where people confess in unexpected ways, sometimes to people they barely know, simply because the burden of deception becomes unsustainable. As time passed, the initial shock and controversy surrounding the episode evolved into deeper conversations about the nature of marriage in contemporary society. Commentators noted that Jennifer's story, while dramatic in its public revelation, was not unusual in its essential elements. Many marriages struggle with communication problems, emotional distance, and partners who feel unheard. Many people in unhappy relationships stay for years out of fear, obligation, or concern about social judgment. Some of those people have affairs. The specific circumstances of Jennifer's confession might have been unique, but the underlying dynamics were remarkably common. 2 years after the Family Feud incident, Jennifer and Robert got married in a small private ceremony attended by close friends and family members who had supported them through the difficult transition. Jennifer acknowledged that she understood why some people would always view their relationship as tainted by how it began. But she also expressed her belief that she and Michael had both deserved to be released from a marriage that was no longer working for either of them, even if the path to that release had been messy and painful. Michael Watkins eventually remarried as well, to a woman he met through a divorced person's support group. In interviews, he spoke about how his second marriage was fundamentally different from his first because he had learned to communicate honestly and listen actively to his partner's needs and concerns. He credited the painful end of his first marriage with teaching him lessons that made him a better partner the second time around. The Family Feud episode remained one of the most watched and discussed clips in the show's history. Every few months, it would resurface on social media, generating new rounds of debate about fidelity, honesty, communication, and the courage it takes to leave situations that are no longer serving us even when doing so comes at great cost. The comments on every new sharing of the video revealed the enduring divide in how people viewed Jennifer's actions, with some seeing her as courageously honest and others seeing her as selfishly destructive. Steve Harvey, when asked years later about the most memorable moment in his hosting career, often cited Jennifer Watkins and her confession about the affair. He explained that it had fundamentally changed how he approached his role on the show, making him more aware that every contestant who walked onto that stage carried their own complex story, their own struggles, and their own breaking points. He became more intentional about treating every family with genuine care and respect, knowing that he never knew what burdens they might be carrying or what truths might emerge when the pressure of performance combined with the vulnerability of being in front of cameras and audiences. The lasting impact of that November afternoon went beyond the individuals directly involved. It sparked important conversations in countless households about the state of marriages, the importance of honest communication, and the warning signs that relationships are in trouble. Many couples credit the episode with motivating them to seek counseling before their own problems reached a breaking point. Others used it as a cautionary tale about the devastating consequences of dishonesty and the ripple effects that affairs create through families and communities. Jennifer Watkins became an unlikely advocate for honest communication in relationships, speaking at events and writing articles about her experience and the lessons she learned from it. She never minimized the wrongness of her affair or tried to justify the deception she had practiced for a decade. Instead, she focused on encouraging people to address problems in their relationships directly and honestly before desperation drives them to make choices that cause lasting harm. She spoke openly about the guilt she carried for hurting Michael, the complexity of loving someone new while still bound to someone from her past, and the difficult work of building a life based on honesty after years of deception. The story of what happened when Jennifer Watkins answered a simple game show question about hiding things in cars became more than just a viral moment or a piece of reality television drama. It became a mirror that reflected uncomfortable truths about modern marriage, communication, honesty, and the human capacity for both self-deception and courageous truth-telling. It reminded viewers that behind every smiling family photo and every appearance of domestic happiness might be struggles that nobody outside the relationship can fully understand. As this remarkable story reaches its conclusion, the lessons it offers remain relevant for anyone navigating the complicated landscape of long-term relationships. Jennifer and Michael's story, for all its public drama and painful revelations, ultimately demonstrated that honesty, however belatedly it arrives, creates the possibility for authentic lives even when it destroys comfortable illusions. Their journey from that shocking moment on stage to their separate paths toward new relationships illustrated that endings, even painful and public ones, can sometimes be the beginning of more honest and fulfilling lives for everyone involved. If this story resonated with you or made you think about the importance of honest communication in relationships, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. The courage to speak difficult truths, the wisdom to listen when partners express concerns, and the honesty to acknowledge when relationships are no longer working are gifts we can all offer to ourselves and the people we love. Jennifer Watkins' moment of truth on Family Feud, whatever we might think of how it happened, reminds us that living authentically requires courage, and that sometimes the most important thing we can do is stop pretending everything is fine and start having the difficult conversations that might save our relationships or free us from ones that cannot be saved.